I went to my boss and said to him, I'm going to go do this crazy thing, and I'm going to start this this company selling books online. And this is something that I had already been talking to him about in a sort of more general context. But then he said, let's go on a walk. And we went on a 2-hour walk in Central Park in New York City. And the conclusion of that was this. He said, this actually sounds like a really good idea to me. But it sounds like it would be a better idea for somebody who didn't already have a good job. And he convinced me to think about it for 48 hours before making a final decision. And so I went away and was trying to find the right framework in which to make that kind of big decision. And I'd already talked to my wife about this, and she was very supportive and said, look, you can count me in 100%. Whatever you want to do. It's true. She had married this kind of, fairly stable guy in a stable career path, and now he wanted to go do this crazy thing, but she was 100% supportive. So it really was a decision that I had to make for myself. And the framework I found, which made the decision incredibly easy, was what I called, which only a nerd would call, a regret minimization framework. So I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life. I want to have minimized the number of regrets I have. And I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. I was not going to regret having wanted, trying to participate in this thing called the internet that I thought was going to be a really big deal. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I might regret is not ever having tried. And I knew that that would haunt me every day. And so when I thought about it that way, it was an incredibly easy decision. And I think that's a very good, it's if you can project yourself out to age 80 and sort of think, what will I think at that time? It gets you away from some of the daily pieces of confusion. I left this Wall Street firm in the middle of the year. When you do that, you walk away from your annual bonus. And that's the kind of thing then the short term can confuse you. But if you think about the long term, then you can really make good life decisions that you won't regret later. And so entrepreneurs and inventors, if they follow their curiosity and they follow their passions and they figure something out and then they figure out how to make it better and they're never satisfied, and you need to harness that. In my view, you need to harness that energy primarily on your customers instead of on your competitors. And so where I sometimes see companies and even young, small startup companies, entrepreneurs go awry, is they start to pay more attention to their competition than they do to their customers. And I think that but that attitude of my grandfather's was but he was full of wisdom. John mentioned the story about the words my grandfather gave to me at one point of, it's harder to be kind than clever. That story, the slightly longer version of that story, because this was really powerful wisdom, is that I made my grandmother burst into tears. And the way I did it was we were driving on a long road trip, and she was a chain smoker. And I was probably, 10 years old, so this was around 1974. And it was in a period of time where there were heavy radio advertisements, sort of anti-smoking radio advertisements, trying to convince people to stop smoking. And one of the advertisements had this figure in it. It said something like, every puff of a cigarette takes so many minutes off of your life. I think it was 2 minutes, but I can't remember. Every puff of a cigarette. So I sat there in the back seat on this long car ride and calculated how many years she had taken off of her life. And in my 10-year-old mind, I had been extremely clever to do this. And so when I was finished with my arithmetic, I proudly announced to her how many years she had taken off of her life. And I got a reaction I did not expect, with her bursting into tears. And so my grandfather stopped the car, and he took me out of the car. And I had no idea what was about to happen, because he had never said a cross word to me. And I thought he might actually be angry with me, but he wasn't. He took me out because we had some privacy from her, and he said these incredible words. He said you're gonna figure out one day that it's harder to be kind than clever for life. So I think it's anyway. I've won that lottery. I won that lottery of having so many people in my life who have given me that unconditional love, and I do think Mackenzie's definitely one of those. And so we moved, and then Mackenzie, who has basically no skill in this area at all, really. I mean, you're the least suited person for this. She did our accounting. For like the first year. Was it the first year? Something like that. And she did it well. I mean, that's what's amazing. My wife is a novelist. She's won the American Book Award. Toni Morrison, the Nobel Prize-winning author, who was Mackenzie's teacher at Princeton.
So did she suggest then to do a bookstore?
Said on the Charlie Rose show that Toni Morrison, the Nobel Prize, said about Mackenzie that Mackenzie was her best student ever. And so, anyway, Mackenzie is a very talented novelist, but she is not an accountant. But she pulled it off, and then just we all get done what we need to get done. And I said, look, it's okay to be afraid, but don't be afraid of our competitors because they're never going to send us any money. Be afraid of our customers, and if we just stay focused on them, and instead of obsessing over this big competitor that we just got. We'll be fine. And I really do believe that. I think that if you stay focused, then the more drama there is and everything else, no matter what the drama is, whatever the external distraction is, what your response to it should be to double down on the customer, satisfying them, not just satisfying them, delighting them. Yeah. Well, first of all, when any criticism, my approach to criticism and what I teach and preach inside Amazon is, when you're criticized, first look in a mirror and decide, are your critics right? If they're right, change. Don't resist.
Right?
No, but not in this case. But we've had critics be right before, and we've changed. We have made mistakes, and I can go through a long list. Probably one of the early most painful ones. It's so stupid. It's hard to believe how we ever did it, but. Early on with the Kindle, maybe the first year of the Kindle or the second year of the Kindle, we had accidentally, illegally sold, or given away, I guess, copies of the famous novel 1984 because it had a complicated copyright history. It was in copyright in the US and not in the UK or something strange like this. So it was in the public domain, but only in certain geographies. And we had screwed that up, and somehow, and this is a kind of mistake that only a corporation can make. An individual can't make this mistake because somehow it's like it happens at the intersections of the different teams. So you've got the legal department saying, "Oh crap, we've made this mistake," and you've got the books team. Anyway, the answer that the company came up with was to, without any notice or warning, just electronically go into everybody's Kindle who had downloaded that book and just disappear it. So it would be as if we walked into your bedroom in the middle of the night, found your bookshelf, and just took that book away. For me, again, this is one of those things where, I focus on, and ask our teams to focus on what we can control. And I expect, whether it's the current U.S. administration or any other government agency anywhere in the world, Amazon is now a large corporation, and I expect us to be scrutinized. So let me tell you, anything of this magnitude, actually any important achievement that you can think of and pursue in life, it's going to turn out to be teamwork, and this was certainly no exception. So being able to build teams and work as part of teams turns out to be an incredible life skill, and one that all of you are already probably learning and will continue to learn throughout your lives. And in fact, when they developed the F1 engine, they blew up so many engines, and they were just incredibly persistent on the test stand over and over and over they would fail. But they persisted. And that's another thing that is so important in life, is just that persistence and pushing through failure. That they succeeded, though. So after they blew up all these engines on the test stand, they finally perfected this incredible object. And you get to see an unflown F1 engine. There are not very many of these, and the museum here is very fortunate to have gotten one from NASA. When they finally perfected this, 65 of these engines flew, and there was not a single failure. I've always been focused. When I was in Montessori school, the Montessori school teacher told my mom that I wouldn't switch tasks, and they got me to switch tasks by picking me up, including my chair, and just moving me to the new task station.
So in your life, what obstacles did you face before you achieved success? Did positivity help you in some ways, and how did you come up with the solution?
Wow, that's a good philosophical question. We all have adversity in our lives. I doubt if you really, if you know somebody, any friend or anybody that you talk to, there's no lack of adversity. And by the way, that's good, because it's what teaches us how to get back up. You fall down, you get back up. It always happens. And you get certain gifts in life, and you want to take advantage of those. But I guess my advice on adversity and success would be to be proud not of your gifts, but of your hard work and your choices. So, you may be, the kinds of gifts you get in life, you might be really good at math. It might be really easy for you. That's a kind of gift. But practicing that math and taking it to the next step, that could be very challenging and hard, and take a lot of sweat. That's a choice. You can't really be proud of your gifts because they were given to you. You can be grateful for them and thankful for them. But your choices, you choose to work hard. You choose to do hard things. Those are choices that you can be proud of. When times are rough, what motivates me when times are rough? I find if I'm stressed about something, it's usually because I'm not doing anything about it. And so if I'm stressed about something, I'm trying to figure out, why am I stressed? I'm listening to my body as a signal that something is awry. And then I find that the stress goes away the second I take the first step of identify the source of the stress. Why am I stressed about this? What's going on? And then, talk to somebody about it. Find allies. I would say that if you can find friends who are interested in similar things or want to help you solve a problem, problem solving is inspiring for me all by itself. As long as I have allies, there's nothing more fun than getting in a room with a group of inventors and saying, look, here's the problem. Let's invent a solution to it. And as soon as you start doing that, I find that it turns from something that might create stress into something that creates fun. Well, so first of all, you don't choose your passions choose you. And all of us are gifted with certain passions, and the people who are lucky are the ones who get to follow those things. And I always advise our young employees, I meet with interns and so on, you can have, and my kids too, you can have a job, or you can have a career, or you can have a calling. And if you can somehow figure out how to have a calling, you have hit the jackpot, because that's the big deal. And most people don't ever get there. You're very lucky if you have a career. A lot of people end up with a job. And so, my job, one of my jobs as the leader of Amazon, is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good. It's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But you really, it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets, and you need to encourage that. And if you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments, and if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're going to work. Experiments are, by their very nature, prone to failure. But big successes, a few big successes, compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments. I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com, literally billions of dollars of failures. And you might remember Pets.com or Cosmo, or give myself a root canal with no anesthesia very easily. None of those things are fun, but they don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure, they eventually get in a desperate position where the only thing they can do is make a kind of Hail Mary bet at the very end of their corporate existence. Whereas companies that are, making bets all along, even, big bets, but not bet the company bets. I don't believe in bet the company bets. That's when you're desperate. That's the last thing you can do. Look, Warren Buffett has this great quote. He says, you can hold a rock concert, and that's okay. And you can hold a ballet, and that's okay. Just don't hold a rock concert and advertise it as a ballet. Investors come in all shapes and sizes. They have different investment horizons, different approaches, different beliefs about what the right kind of portfolio looks like. And so it's not one, people use Wall Street as a shorthand, but there isn't one type of investor. They come in all shapes and sizes. And you have to be super clear about what kind of company you're trying to build, what your approach is. We laid that out in our 1997 annual shareholder letter. We said we were going to take big bets. We said they were going to fail. We said some of them hopefully were going to work. We said we were going to invest for the long term, that we were going to try to take advantage of market opportunities as they arose. And there's a certain kind of investor who is aligned with that approach. And so, again, you can hold the ballet or the rock concert, and both can work. Just be clear about which one you are, and then people can self-select. What are the inputs to a higher stock price? And you say, okay, well, free cash flow and return on invested capital are inputs to a higher stock price. Okay, so let's keep working backwards. What are the inputs to free cash flow? And you keep working backwards until you get to something that's controllable. And a controllable input for free cash flow would be something like lower cost structure. And then you back up from there and you say, okay, well, if we can improve our picking efficiency in our fulfillment centers and reduce defects, defects are very, very costly. It's probably, reducing defects at the root is one of the best ways to lower cost structure. And so then that starts to be a job you would accept. You would say, if you're a reasonable person, you would say, I have no idea how to drive up the stock price. I can't manage that directly. It's not a controllable input. But I can make your picking algorithms more efficient. And that will reduce cost structure. And then, follow that chain all along the way. That's what you do in all of these businesses. You want, customer obsession. You want to invent your way out of boxes. You want to invent your way into the future. You want to be patient. And you want to have operational excellence so that you're finding defects at the root and fixing them. My main job today is I'm kind of I work hard at helping to maintain the culture. A culture of high standards, of operational excellence, of inventiveness, of willingness to fail, willingness to make bold experiments. I'm the counterbalance to the institutional no who can say yes. But I won't. I'm not going to be here forever. Amazon is a really many of the traits that make Amazon unusual are now deeply ingrained in the culture. In fact, if I wanted to change them, I couldn't. If I decided tomorrow that I wish Amazon did less pioneering and more close following, I couldn't do it. So I think one way to think about this is, what are you really focusing on? So I'm focusing on those things that I think make Amazon unusual. Genuine customer obsession. So like every single thing you just mentioned, when our senior executives sit down and review those programs, they're looking for customer obsession. Second one that we're focused on is invention. We don't like to do Me Too offerings. We'll be inspired by something we see in the world. We're not hermetically sealed, but we want to put our own twist on it. We want to try to do something better for customers that's pioneering. So where is the invention? Why is this going to be better for customers than whatever is serving that need in the world today? And then a willingness to think long term. So I'm very focused on those things, and also the operational excellence, reducing defects at their root. Those are the things. That's the culture of Amazon. It's the habits that we have. Those are the things I'm focused on.
What's the vision there?
Well, first of all, and probably most fundamentally, you don't get to choose your passions. Your passions choose you. And for whatever reason, when I was 5 years old, Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon. I was imprinted with this passion for space and for exploration. And I think it's important. I could come up with lots of rational reasons why it's important, and I really do believe them. We humans have, I think it's probably a survival skill that we're curious and like to explore. And I think our ancestors who were incurious and failed to explore probably didn't live as long as the ones who were like looking over the next mountain range to see if there were, more sources of food and better climates and so on and so on. So we are really evolved to be pioneers, and for good reason. So, new worlds have a way of, you can't predict how or why or when, but new worlds have a way of saving old worlds. And that's how it should be. We need the frontier. We need people moving out into space. My vision is I want to see millions of people living and working in space.